Nice to meet you all. I am Samuel Petit. I am the founder and the deputy director of a laboratory in France with La Rochelle University, which is a laboratory about image analysis that worked for more than 10 years on the analysis of comics, manga, webtoon images, which is one of the most complex documents you can have when you want to have an AI analysis. I'm also the founder and the former director of ComixSuite, which is the software that uses that AI to help the translation of comics. But today, I don't want to speak too much about comics. We will speak about comics and also accessibility of comics, which is something that is not happening yet, but we will try to solve that. And I want to go back to more general concept about computer vision in the book industry. So I will be a little more general than last year, and I hope it will interest you. And it will connect a little with some of the presentation, and of course I apologize for my very bad French-English accent with a lot of English mistakes. So please be... Okay, so in fact, we will see that what we are talking about when we are speaking about computer vision, we are speaking about a tension, a fight between the fact in the center we need to have a real precision, we need to have the capacity to extract the sense, maybe describe the image, and it have to be what you have in the image. The problem is the AI, there is a lot of bullshit in the AI capacity to do the things right. And we have also a problem of cost, because if you want to do that, of course, by human, it will cost a lot. But even when you are speaking about AI technology, it's not free, and it's a little what will be behind everything I will tell you today. So if we try to understand what it is to, in fact, make the AI analysis of a book inside to analyze an image, this is something like that. In fact, your image needs to be understood by the AI, and to do that, in fact, the AI will make a segmentation, so we call that some segmentation, like my first name. It's a segment anything technology. And the goal is to identify some region of interest inside the image. Then you will have, and it has been explained already this morning, a context analysis to find the sense, more information about the image in the page of the book, in your EPUB, in your PDF, in everything. But in fact, if you want to have a very good analysis, you also will need a global context analysis. I mean to analyze the complete books. But this is not the same context analysis, because one thing I want to introduce to you, I don't want to be too much technical, but I want to try to help you to understand but maybe a little more the technical aspect than that was presented this morning. So the problem is when you feed an AI with the content, in fact, there is a limitation. There is a limitation in terms of token, of word, of quantity of data that an AI can accept. So, in fact, if you load a book with a complete book, probably they will have an indexation of the book, an understanding, a translation of the book in something that the AI can understand, and there will be, to understand, there will be the context around the image that will be analyzed in one shot, but in fact there will be something that will happen before, and in that translation where the AI try to understand the complete book, in fact, they will probably make some misunderstandings. There will be some error. So you have to make the difference between that two type of context. And there is also the capacity in AI, we call that clip, for in fact, the capacity to connect the image with something that is really related to. So, for instance, when you have the legend behind, it will be not the same treatment also for the AI. So, in fact, the AI have many ways to understand the picture. Okay, so why we want to do that? Well, we want to do that to describe the image. Why we want to describe the image? To improve the search engine, and today the search engine in the digital books universe is not great at all. You cannot search for the image inside the book. You don't have a Google image of the book in nearly any platform, professional or B2C platform. You want to dialogue with your ebooks. We see that a little this morning. This is, I think, one of the main new interaction you will have with books and with image. Of course, we will speak also about accessibility. I will try to explain that a little in a different way, and I will speak a little about comics, manga, webtoon. Okay, so how we describe an image in a book. So, how to do it? A short description, a long description, a descriptive description. For instance, imagine, I don't know, for those who like art history, I don't know if I take The Wanderer from Gaspar David Friedrich, we have German speakers this morning. You can say it's a man on the top of a mountain, he sees the sky with the cloud. I don't know if that kind of description is very interesting, but why not? You can have an interpretative description. For instance, you have, I don't know, one more time I take a book history, but this time it's about war, and you have soldiers that are sad because they lost some brother in arms, and we don't see that in the picture. But the text around the picture tell you that. So you need to have a different approach in terms of description. You can also have a thematic, and in fact, you can have a lot. There is many ways to describe an image. Okay, thematics, let's select that one, for instance. I take the portrait of Napoleon that everybody knows, but the problem is, in a military history books, we will speak about everything about the power, the sign of power, but in sartorial books, we will speak about the clothes and maybe the choice of the jewels and that kind of stuff. So the description will be completely different. And in art history, one more time, we will speak about the oily the painting, the touch, where we are in the history, about the black and white, the many things. So in fact, the description will be completely different. That's a big issue, in fact. So describing image in books. Okay, so of course, I think there is a lot of people who are working in the publishing industry. So of course, you want to comply with the Digital Accessibility Act. In a few months, you will have to be compliant. And if you are not doing that, you will have some infraction to pay. And there is 1 million of books to update. And what was said by Demarx this morning is only 2% of the book are completely compliant today. 26%, if I remember correctly, your figures are easy to adapt, but in fact, there is more than half of the books that are not ready at all to be compliant. Okay, but if you want to be compliant with Accessibility Act, very well. If we follow the instruction, you only need that, short and long description. If you want to be cynical, you can put whatever description you want, even if this is bad, you will comply. I'm not sure if it will be interesting for the user, but the problem is, even for the long description, when you have something like that, like in a book of geopolitics, how long the description? Because to describe that, this is nearly impossible. So that's another issue. Okay. And one more example of problem we have. If we address the people who are blind, there is people who have just lost their sight, I don't know, when they are 20, 40 in age. And that's very interesting because they have the memory of the colors, they have the memory of visual things. We work with the Association Valentin Huy in France, and so we work very close to the one of the main foundations that adapt the book for the people with visual disorder. And in fact, when we challenge a little the image description, it's very frustrating because in fact, what the needs of the people, there is a big variety of needs. So someone who has the memory of color, maybe he's interested that the description use that, but someone who is blind from birth, he has no idea. So if we switch off the light, for instance, a sentence like the yellow morning light will be meaningful for someone who has lost his sight, but absolutely not for someone who is blind from birth. And you will have in your AI description to adapt that in a completely different way, which brings us to the question of treason, because you have to change the way you will describe the image to adapt to a very targeted audience. Okay, but in fact, when you think about it, you want it all. In fact, you want to produce every kind of description because all the description will be useful in a digital experience. It's not only a question of compliance. Of course, for you, for those of you who are publishers and that are already very stressed by the compliance with the Digital Accessibility Act, you will do the minimum. But believe me, the minimum will be not enough. You will go back to that work many times and you will multiply the version of the text you will integrate behind your image in your books. In my laboratory, in fact, we are raising funds right now in 2 projects, and we want to involve human science and ergonomic laboratory, because we suspect that, in fact, we are far from for providing a good user experience to the people, and we want to have a scientific measurement of that. So we are raising nearly 1.5 million, so it's a lot for research in 2 programs. And we hope to have in the upcoming years some results that will help the interprofession to improve the type of experience you want to have in the enrichment of the data behind the image in your ebooks. Well, I want to go back very quickly to my precedent slide about the kind of user experience. I say very quickly that we will speak about new generation of search engine. It will be very interesting to have kind of Google image search for your ebooks. Today you don't have. But this is very useful. One of the scientific programs, one of the programs I explained just before where we found research, it's also for a scientific player. Because in science, but in fact in every domain, but in science this is crucial because you want to find your schematic and you want to have a cross-book search, which you don't have in an ebook platform today. You only have a classical search. You search the title, you search the content, the digest of the book. Maybe if you want to make a version 1, you will search the title of the image if you index the image, but the title of the JPEG is not meaningful at all. If you want to search correctly, you can say, it's an AI search. But if you load, believe me, if you load 1 million catalog each time you want to make a search, the problem is AI is not really ecological, so if you want to make bold the ocean tomorrow, do that. So you don't want to do that. In fact, you want to have a classical indexation. In fact, you want to go back to low-tech search technology, but you want that kind of low-tech search technology are capable of searching the unrich information made by AI, of course, if the AI produce meaningful description. And that's why we need the thematic description, the descriptive description, the thematic description, some text that contains the ellipsis that is not inside the image. This is very important because if you want to retrieve the good result, you need the information, included the indirect information of your image. I will not insist very much because we had quite a good demonstration that you want to dialogue also with your image. So the perfect example is the image I showed just before. You know the maps about geopolitics? That's perfect. You don't have the complete information. You have a simple description. This is the maps about how, I don't know, the commerce work in Central Asia, in the Pacific, for instance. And this is not enough. So you want to dialogue. You want, okay, but I have read the book. I see the image. I don't understand everything. Why, I don't know, why Taiwan is included with Korean, for instance. And then the AI can provide a good experience, because if the AI uses the context of the book, the additional information that is behind the image, you will have a good user experience. And this is what we want, because digital reading, you know, there is always a fight between the paper reading, the digital reading. Digital reading must bring something new in terms of user experience. This is something we want in the digital experience. We are wishing to use digital for that kind of stuff. We are not wishing for pleasure. For pleasure, we buy a print book. Maybe if you have disabilities, you will be very happy with a digital book. So it's not but it's something very useful. And of course, the accessibility of visual in the book. So today, to be compliant, one more time, you need to produce the short and the long description. But just take the example I took just before with the blind people that lost their sight or that was blind from birth. You see immediately there is a problem. Imagine you have a book of art history. If you don't address the two users, in fact, your description will not be usable for one public and not be usable for the other one. So this is really an issue. And I'm not speaking about dyslexia and cognitive stuff, and there is so much accessibility issues that, in fact, it will be not enough. I warn you, all of you that are working in the publishing industry and that running to be compliant, okay, great, you do the first level of description of your image, but this is only the beginning of your work. Okay, so one more time, we have a tension between the promises, the cost, and the real precision. You don't want to do that by human, especially if you want to do a multi-version description. So you will need AI, and you will need to limit the error, the hallucination of AI. So how do you do that really when you want to make a quality description? Well, you have, in fact, we see the coming back of, for those of you who are technical, maybe some of you know something that was very popular in the 90s, that was the expert system. When we want to build complex computer system, we build expert system. And in fact, when DeepSeek, you know, the Chinese AI come, everybody speaks in the news, the AI is very cheap in comparison with American AI, and this is what we heard in the newspaper. And but there is another reason why DeepSeek was interesting. It was, in fact, because he break the vision of one big AI, and he come back to many specialized AI, a little like if you have 10 experts behind you, and not one expert that is the expert of everything, and each expert will provide you a better response. And this is a little what we are seeing now in the new generation of AI. And you need to mix non-hallucinative technique, because we speak about LLM and VLM every day, but there is tons of AI technique. And today, the fashion is LLM, but believe me, there is many other ways to do artificial intelligence, and we need also to have some modules that will sometimes do mistakes, but not the same mistakes. They will not hallucinate and provide you bad response, they will just not respond if they are not able to. But if you combine that with VLM that are able to read image, but sometimes they will produce misinformation. If you combine them, you will have a better result. And you need something very, oops, I go a little too quickly. You need to have something very important for you in the publishing industry. All of you, you don't want your book is eaten by the giant AI American company, right? So, in fact, what will happen is to install in your publishing house, in your startup, etc., customized local LLM. In fact, for an LLM to be efficient, you want that the LLM eats your book. You just don't want to share that. So you will install local LLM and you will learn little by little to customize. Because if the LLM knows the complete catalog of books you are managing, if you combine that with what you have above, you will have good description. Wow, 4 minutes. I have to be a little quicker. And you have to be a martial artist of prompt engineering. Huh? Okay, because you want it all, I already say it, even if you don't know it. Okay. For the last 4 minutes, I will speak a little about computer vision for comics, manga. So what we are building for 10 years with the laboratory is to have some components that will understand the structure of comics. This is very complex because there is a so big artistical diversity of comics that the bubbles are not always white, the layers of the panel are not always square like that. You have many things, you have a lot of very innovative way to construct your narrative. And this is very hard, in fact, to extract with fidelity the information. So I co-founded a translation software. The future of that software is a little in discussion right now. So I will not speak a lot about that, but just because also I presented that last year, but just for you to understand, with the AI, we extract the text, we provide the translation interface, and after that, you can re-inject the translated text and avoiding a ton of copy and paste in your InDesign document. So this is very efficient. But there is some competitor in Asia who raise a lot of money, and we need a little to think how what we need to do in the next strategy. Okay, the problem is that is not enough. If you speak about accessibility, as I said, there is a lot of issues. So, and there is a lot of solution you need to provide if you want to, sorry, the slide is in French, but if you want to bring a solution. For someone who is shaking, you need to have a button that is outside on the screen, and you need to have panel navigation. But now, in the laboratory, we focus on the most difficult things, is to try to solve that for blind people, which is not obvious because we are speaking about a visual content, visual narrative content. And just for you to understand something very clear, you can't do that with human. And we do that with l'Association Valentin Huy. They produce a very beautiful audiobook of Asterix, one of the famous French comics. The problem is it's more than 1,000 for each page. And this is great. I don't want to replace human, but when you have that kind of cost, you produce between 1 and 3 books per year. So it will not bring the solution for the people who have visual disabilities. It's not working. We need to kill that cost. So that's a little what we are trying to do. And the problem is we have a lot of artistical diversity. So to do that, you need to build new kind of visual interpretation AI component. There is a ton that I put on the screen. Just let me explain maybe 1 or 2. You need, for instance, main character identification. Of course, in a comics, you will have some main character. Some are secondary. You don't want to name them. Some are just, I know, many people walking on the street. You don't want to describe them, just to say there is people on the street. So you have to understand that. You have to understand, for example, voice consistency. You have many, in a series, you have many tomes. Well, you want that the same voice is generated for each character. And I reached the end of my talk. I just will take 1 minute and I finish my presentation. So, in fact, you have a lot of challenge. I have to remain a little secret on that because we are working a lot under the water. Just, we have an open scientific publication, so you can check the Toward Accessible Comics for Blind and Low Readers. And you have an example of image that was described. Just there is a text, but we are able to produce the audio version with the voice, with the sound. And we are beginning to reach a level of R&D that is very high, and we begin to be able to tell the story. So for all the people who are blind, this is very, very great. One last word, it's why this is important to do that. Because comics manga are one of the most popular type of content. We are not speaking about only old people who lose their sight, but children. And when you have a children that is 10 in age, that not read the same books as the friends, and if we don't catch him back in the reading or listening for someone who is blind, of course, we will lose him completely, and he will never read or never listen. So there is something in stake. There is something in stake. And 2 minutes, I thank you.